writers. Have you ever bought a writing craft book someone says you just have to read?
Is it still sitting on your shelf? Have you even cracked the spine?
That's totally me.
Don't ask Renee how many craft books she owns.
Why do we keep buying these books we never read?
We all want to improve as writers, but that's hard to do alone.
That's why we started the Words to Write By podcast, to tackle these books together chapter by chapter and learn from their advice.
Or not. Sometimes they're wrong.
Hi, I'm Renee Nelson, former college writing instructor turned full-time writer and podcaster. After many years, I finally have a complete draft of my memoir.
And I'm Kim Smuga-Otto, author of the humorous fantasy series Boy Bands and Dragons. The first book, Our Comeback Tour Slaying Monsters, will be released this year by Riverfolk Publishing.
And now, on with the podcast.
Welcome to the Words to Write By podcast.
Welcome!
Welcome. So today we're back to Christopher Vogler's writer's journey. So we are finishing up on the archetypes. This book is separated into the journey, which, everyone, the various stages, but also the idea that you have archetypal characters that occur in stories. The idea being that when Joseph Campbell was studying myths, he saw the same kind of characters showing up again and again in all these different cultures, and he called them archetypes because they always showed up, or so he said.
Right. And if you're now just joining us, in past episodes, we talked about the hero, the mentor, and our last episode was the threshold guardian, the herald, and the shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Can I do one more thing? Also, if you need a primer for the hero's journey steps, you can go to the website, and I have a comprehensive study guide for the hero's journey using The Hobbit and, passages from The Hobbit to illustrate each step of the journey. So now we're on to the Shadow. What's the next one?
Allies and the Trickster.
And the Trickster.
So first of all, this book is not that well written, in the sense that he puts sentences together and they kind of fit, but overall it's just kind of a nonstop set of ideas he has.
Yeah, nothing actually has any kind of explanation, and when he uses an example, he just throws them out there.
But I expect a certain amount of continuity between each of these chapters, since they're all about an archetype. You expect to say, the hero is the character that does such and such. For the shadow we get, the archetype known as the shadow represents the energy of the dark side, the unexpected, unrealized, or rejected aspects of something.
Of something.
Yeah.
What do you think that something is?
I have no idea. I don't even think he's talking about a character. He's talking about an element or an aspect of a story.
Right. When I was a comp teacher, I used to circle the word thing. And I'd be like, what is this thing? Or it? I would have circled this and been like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the life we live now, dear listener.
So my problem with this book is I come to it and I read a little bit and I said, well, this is stupid. And then I start thinking and saying, well, maybe it could be this. And then it's like, well, that's kind of profound. But that's not the book. That's me. I don't think the book has that. However, I did come up with some interesting, profound things about the shadow. We'll get to that.
Okay, well, real quick, he says the shadows are all the things we don't like about ourselves, all the dark secrets we can't admit, even to ourselves. And essentially, the shadow is just the antagonist. It is the villain of the story.
He differentiates between villains and antagonists. Villains are bad guys. Antagonists are just people who are wrong.
I love you, Kim. That was perfect. I was actually going to be like, I don't really quite understand this differentiation he's making, but you nailed it for me. Thank you. Yeah. I want that on a bumper sticker. What was that again? Villains are what?
Villains are bad guys. Antagonists are people who are wrong.
There you go. You heard it here.
Okay. So that's kind of useful.
So why does he make this distinction in the first place? Because we make a distinction early on. I think he kind of does. No, he doesn't. We kind of came to that conclusion that a hero is on a hero's journey. A protagonist is just the main character of a story.
Yeah.
So is he trying to make that distinction that a villain is in a hero's journey, whereas an antagonist is just the antagonist in a story?
No, he is saying that hero is going to be up against somebody, and it can either be a bad guy, someone who's really just needs to be taken down, or it could be some other person that maybe has different ideas or is in competition with the hero or is a friend that's, changed. Like, antagonists are a lot broader.
Okay, so they're either evil or they're stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Then we've got the psychological function, the woo-woo land. The shadow can represent the power of repressed feelings, deep trauma or guilt can fester when exiled to the darkness of the unconscious. I got all deep there. And emotions hidden or denied can turn into something monstrous that wants to destroy us.
I noticed he said the power of repressed feelings. Why isn't it just repressed feelings? Why is the power behind that?
Well, because repressed feelings, I guess, can be powerful in some sense because they can have control over you.
But the sentence structure, the power of repressed feelings, means that it's not powerful repressed feelings.
Repressed feelings have power, essentially.
Okay.
I think it's called nominalization. People overuse it to make themselves sound smart.
That's why I was thinking he used it there.
Oh, yeah. He tried to sound deep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're back in woo-woo land with psychological function. I don't know if there's anything there that really helps you write a successful villain. How about you?
No, I just think he wanted to add that section. He's got that section in every one of these.
He copied and pasted. Well, then what's the next one? Dramatic function. Copied and pasted that too.
Well, the dramatic function actually are often very useful because that's like, what it does in your story.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts on that?
So the dramatic function, he says, is to challenge the hero and give her a worthy opponent in the struggle. Shadows create conflict and bring out the best in a hero by putting her in a life-threatening situation. Well, there you go. But does it have to be life-threatening? I guess if it's a journey, right?
It could be psychologically life-threatening.
Identity-threatening.
Friendship-threatening. Life is a metaphor, possibly.
Sure. Okay. Well, it makes sense, I suppose. Essentially, all it is the dramatic function is to be in contrast to the hero, to give something for the hero.
To give conflict.
To give conflict.
The conflict kind of defines the story, right? When people say what Star Wars is about, they say, it's Luke Skywalker versus the Empire. There's conflict. That's central. So on the one hand, it's one of those things that can feel profound, but then you could say, well, also without conflict, you don't have a hero or a story or anything else. So it kind of is all packaged together.
Yeah, which is weird because a lot of the books we've read, it's not the villain that causes the conflict, it's the desire. I guess it's the things in the way of the desire.
Yeah.
You don't really talk about desire here. Like with the hero, right? Isn't there some kind of desire that they have? But he doesn't really discuss that. He talks about who they are, but not what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is interesting.
Yeah. It's starting to get very much tab A into slot B.
Yeah.
In this kind of description of things.
Yeah. All right. So we've got the main conflict. We don't know why they're the main conflict, other than they are in contrast to the hero.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch of other stuff, and what I came out of it was that he had a couple, useful ideas. The shadow can be worn by other archetypes, and vice versa. Your mentor could have a shadow quality. Your shadow could have a mentor quality. Villain should be humanized, and it could also be the internal struggle within the hero. But, you can get that out of any craft book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Is this book trying to claim that it's got answers that other craft books don't have?
It's trying to claim that by using the hero's journey, it gets to the heart, a very deep heart of the matter.
Yeah.
That the reason why this formula works is because it's universal and intrinsic to humans.
Okay. He's got a nice little paragraph here about women again.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Yeah. In some stories, the person who starts out as the hero's love interest shifts shape so that she becomes the shadow. So it's assumed that the hero is a male. Let's just go there. And then bent on the hero's destruction, femme fatales are often called shady ladies.
Shady ladies.
Do men go around talking about the shady ladies? Because I've actually never heard that term, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
The shady lady. Oh, my core. Oh, God. Ow! Me and Kim did a workout together, a bar class. My poor core. All right. There just doesn't seem to be much here.
No, I think we should go on to our...
But what about the humanizing the shadow?
Well, that's what I was saying. The villain should be humanized.
Okay, so he doesn't tell us what they do. He doesn't tell us why they're important. They are just there in contrast to the hero. That is really shallow.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'd think this would be like a longer chapter because it's the villain.
Right. That's like the most... I mean, villains are really important in stories. And you think that there'd be at least as much meat on the shadow as there is on the mentor.
But there's not.
No.
How disappointing. Oh, fine. Moving on.
So, because he does not give any good examples, we have been using books that we like to give examples. We started this last time with Howl's Moving Castle, and we're going to keep using Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones to go through examples for these things.
Right. Just to throw him a chicken bone, he does have examples. The Lady from Shanghai.
Oh, I remember that movie, don't you?
Yeah, it's one of my favorites or something. An Officer and a Gentleman. He has mentioned this movie many times. It's annoying. I saw it in the theater once. I'm never going to see it again. And most people have never seen it.
Well, I thought so too, and I looked back and realized that actually he also references Master and Commander.
I saw that.
So there's like two of them. That's the reason those are two of his favorites.
Well, he only mentioned Master and Commander once.
Oh, okay.
So far. He's mentioned An Officer and a Gentleman like 4 times.
Oh, right.
He must be one of his favorite movies.
Or someone he knew worked on it.
Or he had a hand in it, got paid to do it. But yeah,
I've noticed he loves the Disney.
Oh, dude, he's got a whole paragraph on the Disney coming up. He talks about Silence of the Lambs, Beauty and the Beast, right? So it's all movies. He does mention some novels later, but again, they're just thrown in there.
Which is why we're using Howl's Moving Castle.
Yes.
So, who do you think are the shadows in Howl's Moving Castle?
I think the shadow is the Witch of the Waste, obviously. But I also think it is Sophie herself.
Okay.
Between those two.
All right, those are yours? Okay, why?
Well, the Witch of the Waste is the big bad. She's the one who turns her old, right? And that kind of frames the story for Sophie's conflict. It's like she has her desire to lift the curse. Mm-hmm. Her desire does change over time, but that's her desire. And the only way to lift it is to either get Calcifer to help, which doesn't really help much, or to confront the Witch of the Waste and somehow lift it. You find out later, spoiler, she could have lifted it herself. She chose to be old.
Yeah.
And Howl actually did a lot of work to undo the spell. And in fact, he may have succeeded at some point in the story. And it didn't work because she just put the spell on herself. Mm-hmm. So that was really fascinating.
So that's why you see her as the shadow as well.
Yes. What do you think?
Those are really good arguments. I had completely different ones.
Cool. Okay.
So my 2 shadows were Miss Angorian. Miss Angorian? How would you pronounce that? Angorian.
Angorian.
Were Miss Angorian and the Fire Demon, which are, spoiler, the same person.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And I thought that was really a good example of the shadow because it is a power. It feeds on magic. It's an element within, and it's actually the fire demon aspect is actually an element in Howl himself, and that was the other shadow character because, he definitely causes some trouble and causes conflict. And Sophie is part of the conflict she's dealing with is Howl and getting him to do stuff that she wants him to do.
Right. I kind of forgot about that twist in the end. All of it comes to a head in like the last chapter. Like she resolves it very quickly. Diana Wynne Jones just like, all the characters there inside the castle and everything's happening all at once. And you're like, ah!
And everybody's talking to everybody.
Yeah. And there's spiders getting cleaned out in his room and everything. Okay. So the twist in the end is essentially Howl gave his heart to Calcifer, the fire demon. so that Calcifer wouldn't die, because Calcifer was a shooting star.
Mm-hmm.
And so that Calcifer wouldn't die, he just did that. But the Witch of the Waste did something similar with her own fire demon.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was that fire demon, like, was stronger than the witch, or took over the witch, or something.
I think the implication is that if Howl and Calcifer had kept going the way they're going, they'd end up like that.
Okay, so she was corrupted.
Yes.
But it turned out that fire demon was, like, stronger than the witch, right?
In the end, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so when the witch was overcome, they still had to deal with that. And I guess the fire demon, the witch's fire demon, manifested itself into a woman named Miss Angorian,
Mm-hmm.
who was somebody in the real world with Howl. If it's confusing, dear listener, it's not just you. This story, Kim's giving me this look like, but it's Howl's Moving Castle, but it's Diane Wynne Jones. And I'm like, I know. If you're confused, I am too. I'm still a little confused about the story. I'm almost tempted to reread it because I know what's happening now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll go download the book or something so that I can listen to it, because I now know all the things that are happening, because she puts these little things in there that don't make sense and they get kind of tied up in the end, but so quickly.
So quickly. It is like, you don't know where it's going, and suddenly it's over.
Right. So I think that's good. I think I forgot all about the fire demon.
Yeah. The way that this archetype chapter actually does make a certain amount of sense is it treats the evil not as a single villain archetype, but as some element within different people and different conflicts. But I also think that it's so broad that it's great for analysis. I don't think it's terribly good for someone writing. It's good when you already have the story, you can pick it apart, but when you're trying to come up with the things and write them down, not so useful.
Right. Okay, so allies. We all know what those are.
He said that it's useful to have someone to send on errands, carry messages, to scout locations. It's convenient to have someone for the hero to talk to bring out human feelings or reveal important questions in the right place. Allies do many mundane tasks.
Nice.
We're not talking about like friends or confidence or, the mentor that brings stuff on the hero. Like, allies are there to do tasks.
Yeah. And if your story does that, I'm not really going to be that interested. If that's all your side characters are doing.
Right.
So I'm kind of confused. I mean, the dwarves do feel a little wooden in The Hobbit. I will say that. They don't have a lot of character except for a couple of them.
The actors bring the character. When they're acted, you see it. When you read the book, they're a little bit sidelined. You can't remember who's who.
I watched that first movie and I tried to forget it quickly. I liked the cartoon.
I think of an ally as a supporting character. Somebody that can definitely get their own award at the Emmys or Oscars. Or someone that, you'd want to write fan fiction about because they're so awesome. Or someone that maybe you can say, honestly, I'd rather read a book about them than the hero. And here I think is one of the fundamental issues, is that the more interesting you make your allies, the more likely that they steal the show. And people want to read about them more than they want to read about the hero. Or they enjoy the book because of the side characters as opposed to the hero.
Interesting. Do you have an example where a book did that? Like a spin-off series?
Well, there definitely are spin-off series. I mean, everyone has books where they like the secondary characters more than the main characters.
True. Well, okay, so there is... I kept bringing up a series in here. Now, I know it's a video game, and I know it's a really awful TV show. I know people are going to hate me for this. But the Witcher series, the books are really good, and the video game's really good. The TV show, not so much. And I will die on that hill. But, but the books have Dandelion. He's got a different name in the show for no obvious reason, but he is this bard who tags along. He's also a comedy relief. He's all of that bundled up together for Geralt the Witcher, because Geralt's very serious. He doesn't have a lot of emotions because he's been turned into a witcher to kill monsters. And then there's this guy who, la la la, I'm going to go on adventures with you, and I will do songs and annoy you. Mm-hmm. But they are like best friends. Mm-hmm. They really are. They're very close. but they're at odds. And you love Dandelion for that so much. Because as Vogler says, he says, the ally serves the important function of humanizing the heroes.
Yes,
So
that is true.
Right. So that's exactly what Dandelion and the books and the video game does. Well, the video game not so much, but the books he does.
Mm-hmm.
He humanizes the Witcher.
Okay, here's an example. I read Lord of the Rings series. I was okay. I saw the movies and I loved them. And I loved Samwise in it. And Samwise brings something so much more humanizing to Frodo's quest and Frodo's struggle. And Sam's always there for him. And it wouldn't be the same without Sam.
Right. In fact, speaking of side characters taking over, a lot of people argue that in that book, the protagonist is not Frodo, but Sam.
Right. So that's an example of this thing going on. The other one was last week, if you check out the episode, we talked to a lit RPG writer, and he referenced a series called Dungeon Crawler Carl, where the secondary character is the cat Donut. And likewise, many people have argued that the story isn't about Carl at all. It's all about Donut's journey.
How is this a problem, though? I think it's kind of neat that a side character might be so strong. And if the story's told well, I'm okay with that. The hero doesn't have to. Yeah,
no,
sorry.
You're right. I am okay with it too. Sometimes, like you said in The Witcher, the character is very serious and not actually as interesting by themselves, so you bring in a side character. But then what does that do to the hero's journey? Where suddenly it's not just the hero that's doing stuff and the hero that's all relied upon, but the side character that really is bringing our hearts into the story.
Well, I think the primary conflict is with the main character. That is the journey they're on. The side character, and they might have their own journey they're on, but they're hanging out on someone else's journey. Right? Like, don't you just tag along with someone to hang out with them? And they've like, oh, I've got to do errands. Oh, I'll tag along. They've got their own thing, and you just kind of tag along. Mm-hmm. Right? And you entertain them. And I don't know.
It feels like if you have a really awesome secondary character, an ally, that a certain portion of your audience is going to care a lot less about the hero and their success and a lot more with how it affects the ally. So in a way, I feel like it does shift the story to the ally. And maybe not in a bad way, but I'm not sure if you're still talking the hero's journey when you're really in it to find out what happens to Donut. Or what's his name? Dandelion.
That's true. But Dandelion, he's clearly an ally. He is not a main character because the Witcher has to save him all the time. He's going to die in like every book. One thing of note that Vogler talks about allies in literature. And he gives some really good examples. I'll give him that. One specifically is Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
In Sherlock Holmes. So there's Sherlock and Dr. Watson.
Mm-hmm.
The protagonist is clearly Sherlock, but he doesn't get very far without Watson. And Watson gives us a view into the world of Sherlock. I mean, would you say that Watson is the protagonist or Sherlock?
I would say Sherlock's because Sherlock's the one that does things, and Watson often follows along and records, especially in the books themselves. Like, we never see Watson saying, oh, Sherlock, come over here and check out this clue.
No, I guess not.
That'd probably be the TV series, but not in the actual books.
Okay. So everybody knows Sherlock and Watson, and you can't separate them.
Right.
You need them both.
When they tried doing that, it didn't work out. That's why they had to kill off Watson's wife.
Exactly. So that's why you need Samwise and Frodo. Sometimes there's a pair, but one of them's going to stand out a little bit more.
Sometimes the secondary character that stands out so the main hero can actually do the job.
That's true. Sometimes they have to get themselves, kidnapped. And the hero has to go get them. I don't know.
Do you remember that episode of She-Ra when all the guys get themselves kidnapped by pirates so that they can get the girls to come and save them and appreciate them?
Yeah. I remember that. That was actually pretty good. That was the Guy Day.
Yeah.
They went on their Guy Day. Mm-hmm. All right. So there's also multiple allies. They talk about multiple allies.
I would like to say that when you have multiple allies and nobody knows who they are except by their name, like, we know about the Argonauts. Can you name one Argonaut?
No.
There you go. So if you have multiple allies where they go by a group name, then...
Right.
Then they really are there for the mundane tasks.
Yeah. There's such a thing as too many allies. What was that one book? My husband has a whole story about him reading these books. Wheel of Time. Multiple protagonists, multiple allies, and at book 6, I put them down. I was like, I'm done.
You got to book 6. Congratulations.
Yeah, I got to book 6. It was really those too many characters. So just know that can happen.
He also talks about Western allies, sidekicks.
Sidekicks.
We talk about how important sidekicks are, but then we talk about the mundane functions where they're really not that important. And sidekicks, it's very easy to only be a sidekick. Do you ever watch the cartoon version of The Tick?
Yes.
There's at one point where, I think they're battling Chairface Chippendale or something, and someone says, "Oh, you're the sidekick to Arthur. Kick him to the side." And then there was also the time they went to the superhero nightclub, and there was a sidekick lounge.
Right.
And Arthur had to sit there with the 12-year-old boy and the gorilla, or the chimpanzee.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, this is making me think of Rick and Morty.
Yes.
Rick and Morty plays on that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They have the Morty daycare. And then, yeah. No, I'm sorry. It's not Morty daycare. It was Morty's dad's daycare.
Yes.
That was pretty fun.
Okay.
All right. So we've got Western allies. So if you're writing a Western, that could be really helpful.
Or a superhero story.
Or a superhero story, yeah. They serve as a conscience. So, Jiminy Cricket.
Disney.
Oh, yeah. Is this the paragraph with Disney? No, it is not. What are we now? Non-human allies.
I mean, non-human allies are kind of almost a standard because pets do humanize people. You can create a dog or a cat or a talking whatever. And I mean, those are great sidekicks and side characters.
Is there a sidekick in Howl's Moving Castle?
So the problem is that you have so many secondary characters. And I almost think that Diana Wynne Jones has a little bit of fun with this because at the very end of the story, she brings all the secondary characters, all the characters total that we've basically run into the castle. And they're all helping in their own ways. And it's pure chaos. And at the very end, they're all trying to get Sophie and Howl's attention while the two stare lovingly into each other's eyes. So it's almost like, here's all your side characters doing stuff.
Right. The little party. Kind of like at the end of a Saturday morning cartoon, everyone starts laughing.
Yeah.
They should have trauma and stuff. But no, it's okay. We're alive. Ah, ha, ha, ha. I don't know. I think it's interesting that he has a bullet point here for non-human allies. I don't know why. I guess a deity of some kind, he says.
God's on your side.
Sure. The gods are on your side.
Let's look at the fundamental aspect of a story. Very few stories have the hero doing everything. Usually there's somebody that helps out at some point, and those are your allies. And, you keep track of them, and you can decide to make them very, close and personal, or you could just have them be in the background doing stuff. But it's very hard to write a story where there's only the hero who meets the mentor and then sets off on his journey.
Again, like the previous chapter, Vogler doesn't go so much into what you can use an ally for. I guess you can use it as a conscience. They can run errands for you. They can humanize your hero.
Why would you write a story that didn't have any other characters besides the hero and the bad guy and the mentor?
Right. I don't like thinking of side characters as just helpers. That sounds really like you're hiring help.
Yeah, that you and the author just have to get your hero out of a particular situation. So here comes a side character to help along. I think some of the archetypes play really well into the hero's journey, and some of the archetypes, when you explore them, just kind of stop being archetypes. Because that's the other thing too. You have so many different kinds of side characters. What about them are an archetype? Other than the fact that they're not the hero.
Yeah, exactly. How is this an archetype? You're right. I don't know. I mean, so he does mention, this is the one I used to teach because I taught them mythology and folklore a long time ago. He mentions Enkidu and Gilgamesh, and they were a pair. And Enkidu was a trickster god, which we're going to get into soon. At first, they were sort of enemies, but they became frenemies. No, they actually became like bros, and they would go on quests together. And later, I believe Enkidu dies, which serves as some kind of quest. Gilgamesh gets all depressed and stuff. And then he starts worrying about death, and then he wants to go find the elixir of life. Blah, blah, blah. these pairs where, there's these chums that hang out together and they go on quests together is a thing.
He's definitely pointing to some common trope in myths.
Right. But unless you're doing like a Sherlock Holmes and Watson, a lot of the stories I think I like, it tends to be people don't have a sidekick. They just
have friends.
They have friends and other characters that don't just do stuff. They're there to add to the plot.
And here's the other thing. There are a lot of writing craft books or people that give lectures that spend the lecture talking about how your secondary characters have to have an internal life of their own. They have to have things they do. They may be helping the hero out at this point, but they've got other stuff going on. And that is as critical to them as helping the hero. They're not just there to support.
Exactly. Because if they were, it would be really obvious. And then that story would suck.
Mm-hmm. So I think that if you're writing a story and someone says, oh, you have a problem, you should bring an ally in right now. There's no heart there. Like the person shouldn't just show up to help and then leave.
Like I think about it, I'm like, okay, if I was writing a story with a hero, right, I would think, well, who is my ally? And if I was writing about Kim, I wouldn't just have her going on like side quests for me, right? She's not my hired help. I would want her to be alive. That's why I'm friends with her, right? It's not just because we're podcast people or friends. We're friends. Anyway, so just so you know, your hero needs friends. How about that? This would have been better if he called it friends.
Yeah, then it wouldn't have sound as intellectually cool.
That's true. He does mention one thing, which I thought was interesting. I see this a lot in movies. The helpful savants. And I wrote down Alfred and Calcifer. Right? So Alfred from Batman series, he's definitely a helpful savant. Mm-hmm. A folktale ally motif. A stock character in tales of romance who help the hero achieve his or her goal by carrying levelers, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, sure. But mostly from Batman, the butler Alfred. Because somehow, depending on which film you're going to watch, he is either like a weapons master or just... He's there whenever Batman needs him. He's a father figure. He gives him what he needs. He can also run errands because he's getting paid and he's the butler and that's what he does for his job. Calcifer is also a savant because he does magic, right? He's a demon. He does magic. He knows how these things work. He teaches Sophie about the contracts and how those work and all this other stuff. So that's what I thought an ally was. Also Michael from Howl, I thought was also an ally.
Yes, he's absolutely critical to help. And he's always there. He's always around too. That's the other thing too, is an ally is someone that in your story that's with the hero all the time.
Yeah. He's a wizard in training. So he's providing that kind of understanding of, well, Howl was once me or what was once Michael, right? So this is how Howl got his powers and got good at them. But also Michael has his own internal story. I mean, he goes out and he falls in love and he's got that own quest going on, which I think is really nice.
Yes.
Makes him a round character.
Yeah.
Not just an errand boy.
Final bit. The psychological function for the allies is actually hidden at the back of the book, of the chapter, which is a bit different because usually it comes first. So he must have thought it wasn't terribly interesting, but he knew he had to put it in there.
Right.
It says that the ally in dreams and fiction might represent the unexpressed or unused parts of the personality that must be brought into action to do their job. So that is fitting with the humanizing the hero.
So I guess this is less woo-woo, but he does mention the term powerful internal forces and spiritual crises.
Yeah. We have only one more archetype.
Phew, I'm so ready for these to be done. Besides the hero and the mentor, I really don't feel prepared to write other characters. I don't feel like Vogler's given me enough tools.
He hasn't given me any desire to write about these archetypes. It's not like, wow, that's a shapeshifter. I totally can come up with a story with a shapeshifter.
I mean, I guess in a film, you see more of these things.
I think some of them aren't really archetypes. They're just kind of like...
Well, the Trickster definitely is.
The Trickster is.
Because that's in mythology.
Yes.
Shapeshifters are in mythology, but they're usually the temptress.
Yes, and I wrote under the chapter Trickster, finally a recognizable archetype. says the trickster embodies the energies of mischief and the desire for change.
There you go.
Earlier, he talked about the shapeshifter, and now he talks about the trickster, and they're two separate. And I kind of actually like that they're two separate. I'll go maybe give you my ideas on that later on, but they are two separate entities. This is one of those areas where not everything is everything else, but we actually have a distinction, which is useful.
Yeah. One thing I like that he said about the trickster is they cut big egos down to size.
I wrote that line down.
Yeah.
It made me think of the idea of the king's jester. The jester is the only person that can make fun of the king.
Right.
And it's useful for the king to have somebody that makes fun of him.
Don't we have those presidential dinners where they roast the president?
The correspondence dinner. My favorite was actually when they had Key and Peele and they did the anger translator.
I just watched that again recently. It is as funny as it was back then. It is so... She's going to get that money. So funny. And then Obama takes over and then he's all afraid of him, you know? Yeah. Oh, fine. Oh, that's such a funny. Okay.
So that's the trickster. Also wrote down they can bring about healthy change and they are the enemies of the status quo. Like sometimes your book's just going along and the trickster comes in and they change things up for the better.
Yeah. So in The Hobbit, I thought of Merry and Pippin. Yeah. And that was interesting because they were round characters, not just allies. But Pippin kept getting in trouble. In fact, Merry, he levels up like emotionally and in maturity, and Pippin is slow to do so. And that was a very fascinating dynamic.
You know, Pippin's the only one that actually throws Gandalf for a loop. Gandalf is usually so above everything else and so in control, but the one thing he can't handle is Pippin.
Right. But in the end, he's with Pippin, like in that final book. Mm-hmm. It's almost like, I have to keep an eye on you because you're going to like mess all this stuff up. And finally, Pippin does grow as a character. Anyway, he is a trickster. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we talked about what they are. We're now in the psychological function.
And then we got the dramatic function, which is comic relief.
There you go.
And like, you know, sometimes you'll have an incredibly intense scene and then the trickster character will do something funny and it breaks the tension in a good way. Because you just can't keep going darker and darker and darker. Like sometimes you need that moment of relief.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I couldn't really think of an idea, but sometimes like I like to write a story where things are funny, and then suddenly they're not funny anymore because of something that trickster says that twists it to something more serious.
Yeah.
I think actually the last Unicorn Schmendrick did that sometimes. Like he'd be kind of like talking about stuff that was kind of random and then suddenly he'd click onto something very central and important.
Yeah. Comic relief is important. Not all stories need that, but...
So here's one thing I thought of, and we're reading the dramatic function. A trickster is not the same thing as a shapeshifter, because a shapeshifter we were talking about is really linked to kind of the hero's identity. It's a very personal interaction, whereas trickster seems a bit more universal and a bit more broad and a bit more for the whole story, as opposed to like a trickster isn't, I mean, it can cut down the ego. It can be an element, but it's not like a second side to the hero.
You know, the loyalty of the trickster is very rarely in question. Mm-hmm. Although Loki does like to change sides a lot. But I feel like when it comes to loyalty, that's more of a shapeshifter thing where, you know, they will change on a dime. You'll find out later that they were never the ally. They were always a villain or vice versa. Mm-hmm. Whereas the trickster, they're their own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're usually almost always on the hero's side. But if they end up leaving the hero, they usually end up coming back.
Yeah. Like the trickster isn't evil or a troublemaker. They are a troublemaker, but not in the sense of being like an Achilles heel for the main hero. Like they're kind of a troublemaker all over the place. And sometimes just plot-wise, they're a troublemaker. They mix things up.
Yeah, they're kind of chaos magicians. They create a lot of chaos in the world. But what that does is that draws attention to things in the world. Mm-hmm. They help gain perspective. They stir up trouble for its own sake.
Okay, one other Disney plug here. They talk about trickster heroes as far as animals go. At a certain point, he's talking about all the various Warner Brother cartoon animals and how they worked as tricksters, and gets to Mickey Mouse started off as an ideal animal trickster, although he has matured into a sober master of ceremonies and corporate spokesman. Don't mess with the boss.
Yeah, totally. Does mention Bugs Bunny.
Completely aside, he goes on and on about rabbits as tricksters.
What the hell is that? That is bizarre.
Hares are often tricksters in mythology.
Yes. One of the books I wished we had picked, which we didn't, and it's also a book I wish I had taught in mythology and folklore, but which I didn't, was Watership Down. Mm-hmm. It's my friend Linda's favorite story, and for good reason. There is lots of rabbit mythology in it. It is a beautiful book. It is dark, and it is awesome. And the characters, yes, there are side characters, but they are rich and they're round. I mean, that book I can't suggest enough. Maybe he was talking about Watership Down and didn't want to mention the book. I don't know.
No, I just think that he probably had a lot of... I mean, he also goes to other animals.
Okay. Dandelion is a bit of a trickster in the Witcher books because he gets into trouble.
Uh-huh.
He does dumb stuff.
And that knocks up the status quo.
Yep.
Like nothing like your trickster character to get themselves kidnapped to change things up.
Exactly. I want to mention here, again, the examples in this book are so weird. He brought in the show in living color.
Wasn't that an ensemble cast sort of performance thing?
Yeah. It was where Jim Carrey got his break and a couple of other people. It was an alternative to a Saturday Night Live. Yep. I remember watching it as a kid. And to see it still here. I mean, this is the 25th anniversary edition. You would have thought his editor would have just been like, look, we've got to update this. And Vogler's like, nah, it's fine. There's a lot of weird in this book. It makes me wonder if people actually read it.
I often get that feeling for pretty much every book that we've done, Renee.
Right. Like with Gardner.
Yeah.
A bunch of people will suggest this book to you, but did they even read it? Because when you read it, you're like, what the hell is this?
Especially the tail ends. It's amazing what you find tucked in the back of craft books. It's like it's like after the author's been at the bar for a while and they really start talking.
Yeah, I know, right? They've gotten drunk. You really dig into their closet and you're like, oh my, did I just find that? There's Fanny, the stripper. Sorry, I'll stop talking about her.
Fanny the stripper.
Fanny the stripper.
Is there anything else you want to say about the chapter here?
I don't think all stories have tricksters. I think a lot of heroes' journeys have them. There's always a trickster in a Disney movie. You can totally find them.
Kids' movies, probably. I don't see why you'd make a kids' movie without a trickster.
Exactly, because they are the comic relief the kids love. They're very silly. Mm-hmm. They're usually an animal, and they're like the sidekick. For example, you had the mice in Cinderella. In Mulan, you had a little baby dragon or little dragon.
In Winnie the Pooh, you have Tigger.
He's totally a trickster. Oh, my God. He is chaos. Pure chaos and some fur and a tail. So there's always a trickster in a Disney film.
And there's always tricksters in children's literature.
Always tricksters in children's literature. So if you're writing a young adult book, maybe have a trickster.
The thing is that a trickster doesn't have to be funny. If you're just looking for a character that causes chaos, most books have that.
Do they? No. I mean, I don't know if you're reading a serious book. Maybe not.
Maybe not, but there's usually someone that messes things up.
Yeah, someone is always messy. Just think Pippin. He's just a bumbling idiot sometimes, and he does dumb shit. But it helps move the plot along. Mm-hmm. It causes trouble. Mm-hmm. And you need trouble, or it's not interesting.
Right. Any good examples from Howl's Moving Castle?
I think Howl is a bit of a trickster. Mm-hmm. It's hard to pin him down, and he is his own worst enemy.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much chaos going on in that book that it's kind of hard to see. I found one example, like early in the book, Sophie, before the whole spell takes place, she visits her sister who's working at the baker's shop. She thinks she's visiting Letty, but in fact it's Martha because the two used a spell to switch positions. And so that's a trickster. That's a surprise. Martha then tells Sophie about how she's kind of being used by their stepmother. And that's a reveal. And that changes the status quo. I think that's a good example of how a trickster mask is worn by a character to get things moving and change the status quo or reveal something.
I will say that the end of Howl's Moving Castle, that detail annoyed me because I was set up to think that there was a darker version of that stepmother coming to roost. Mm-hmm. And in the end, oh no, she's fine. There was no conflict. In fact, Diane Wynne-Jones was even like in the story. She was like, oh, and my sister said these mean things about her mother, but then it turned out that they aren't that bad after all. And I'm like, I guess she's trying to just go against convention here about the evil stepmother. But it annoyed me because it set me up. And I was let down because I was like, oh, wow, there's some really deep drama going on with this stepmother. And I kept waiting and waiting. And then it just kind of deflated. It could be that it comes back because apparently it's a trilogy, right?
Yeah, never see Fanny ever again.
Really?
No. Howl and Sophie shows up in all the books, but she pulls in new characters for most.
Why did she do that? You love this book so much. I kind of want to know. What's your theory here? What do you love so much about Howl's Moving Castle?
I love her character studies. And I think actually as far as character study goes, the second wife that's brought in, that's still quite young, basically brought into this, this widower who has a couple of children, and she's helping out and doing all this stuff. And then, she's forced to take over the business, that she kind of lost a bit of her own young adulthood too. Like she basically got brought into a situation where suddenly she was a mother, and then she was saddled with the business, and, she never got her own adventure.
Right.
So it's kind of cool that she does. I like those aspects, and I like just sort of inhabiting fairy tales. I don't necessarily need to have bad people.
Okay. I just kind of wished that her character was rounded out a little bit more. Mm. To have her just explain it away so quickly within like a sentence annoyed me.
Yes, her books move really fast. But yeah, I like Diana Wynne-Jones because she upturns conventions and you never know quite what's going to happen. And she just jumps in and craziness stuff happens.
A lot of craziness. Diane Wynne-Jones may indeed be a trickster in the world of writing because it is all over the place.
Yeah.
All right. And then the archetypes are done. Give me a high five. Oh, we're finished with the archetypes, except
we have beyond archetypes.
Yes, in big capital letters.
So when we got to this section, Renee's like, we want to maybe save that one for next time because, we covered 3 chapters. I'm like, no, we're going to put it in there because there's nothing in there. Or rather, there's everything in here. This is what, someone that basically decided to pull from all writing sources out there and just do a giant list and data dump. And it's so dense that there's nothing actually usable.
Well stated. Man, you're on it. I don't know if it's the podcast or the writing the novels. It's coming out soon, right?
Yes.
It's coming out in September. And she's just nailing it with like the analysis here. And like,
I also had a theory that maybe this is something with the 25th anniversary with all the other books that are written after him that maybe people like better, like Save the Cat, that they decided that he'd like put some stuff in here to kind of make it sound like, oh yes, I knew about that too.
Right. Or my theory, I don't know. I'd like to look at the old version to see if this chapter's in there, but this could be all the things the editor said. Like, you need to have all of this stuff because all of your explanations don't really go in depth and you don't provide ample examples that are explained. Maybe discuss something about motivation or how the hero identifies themselves or their virtues or what's unique about them. So he just writes them in a big, long list.
Yeah. Or maybe even takes the notes the editor gave him and just rewrites them as sentences, statements.
It's what it looks like. And it's so weird because it comes out like, it looks like some old person is texting. Because there's like these
capitals.
Yeah, there's capital letters. He's yelling at me. How to reveal character through action, dialogue, costume, props.
Or this one. Big reveal. The audience enjoys seeing a tough character show more sensitive side. They also like to see a weak or fearful character show a strong side of courage.
Stop texting at me. Okay. All this are bullet points without the bullet points. Lots of capitalized words that seem a little odd. Let's do a couple, or let's do a few, and I'll put some more on the website.
No, let's not.
No, I mean, like, I just want them to know. I want a comprehensive discussion about this book as a whole. I don't want to skip any chapters.
We read it so you don't have to.
Exactly.
So that should be our byliner t-shirts.
What?
words to write by. We read it so you don't have to.
Right. Okay, so for example, character essentials. Here's a few. Motivated, sympathetic, wounded. So those are just some of the really, capitalized words. In motivated, he says, we have to know what the heroes want, what they wish for, what drives them. On a deeper level, what do they need to complete or heal them?
And I've definitely heard, like, in writing books, the idea of healing a character or motivation or whatever.
Bickham has, I think, a whole chapter on that.
Yes, these things deserve whole chapters. They do not deserve to be squished inside 10 other points.
Yeah, no, it's true. Give me one just read one, Kim. So we give our audience a taste of what we're suffering through here.
Choices. The choices a character makes define the character. We know who they really are by the choices they make. Think Daenerys Targaryen in the Game of Thrones revealing her true nature by destroying the innocent populace of King's Landing.
So he must have watched Game of Thrones then.
Yeah.
This is definitely a 25th anniversary example because this is more recent.
Yes.
The problem is this was not her true nature, and this is why we hated the ending of the Game of Thrones. It wasn't. She just went crazy for no reason.
Because the book didn't get done.
Right, the book's not good. But they still could have given it a good ending. Anyway, we've got inner and outer problem. Every character should have an outer problem to solve, something physical or external, and they should also have an inner problem. Well, thanks a lot. Wow, I didn't know that. Thanks for teaching me how to do it, Vogler.
Or give me some examples or unpack it or something.
It's almost like someone saying, well, you should show, not tell. Like, thanks for everything. Did you know that you need to write paragraphs in your book? Oh, wow, great. Good thing I know that.
Then it also has the other subheading is some character questions. And I looked at that and thought, oh, wait a second, maybe we could use this as an example, and maybe we could use this as a workshop to analyze some of our characters. And then I realized, no, it's just a bunch of like standard, lukewarm questions you'd ask, and there's nothing very deep. It's not like a checklist like this isn't useful, but to have a checklist like this that's just kind of pushed in at this point without any actual unpacking of what you find by asking these questions.
Right. What's the point of these questions? Is really like, we know a character questionnaire is kind of helpful to make your character become a full human being.
But it should be the start of a chapter. It should not be the final bit of the end of a section before you move on to book 2.
Right. And as Kim said, they are like, what is the one thing your protagonist will not do? I don't know.
When your character wishes upon a star, what does he/she wish for?
Oh my God. What is her best quality? Worst quality? What are some other qualities that might be surprising or charming? I mean, that could color a character a bit. Like that could add a little bit of flair to a character maybe to make them seem more interesting. If I applied this to Sophie, she is a rich character. These questions are too base. What is your character's deepest wound so far?
So here's my other issue with this, is that it's so many that you just get lost. So we do these writer process groups, and we had one yesterday, and we have them alternating between just writers getting together to talk about stuff, and then we actually have a writing sprint where we say, okay, it's Wednesday, we need to get some writing done. Renee often starts these with a little tidbit from some craft book that she has, and she came up with this book that had about character, and had a character is a blank age blank that wants blank. Very simple. And I was working on a little short story, and I just put all the characters through that, and it was really useful because it made me focus on the characters for a short bit, made me reach into something about them that was important. But then it wasn't like I did 20 more questions, so I forgot what I said at the beginning.
Right.
Like, this is such a long list that by the time you get done with this, you're like bored of your story. You're not going to want to write anything.
I don't know. I have seen character questionnaires in other craft books. I don't know if I would say that this exhaustive list, which isn't even that exhaustive, is not helpful. Some people do find them helpful. I have assigned Gotham's website. It's a writing school that you can take classes online. I have taken a few. They have, I thought, a really good craft book. Maybe it's one we could do one of these days. The one on their website I thought was really good, and I used to give it to my students. But the questions were way better than this one.
Yes, that's it. They make you think. Here,
Right.
they make you like turn your brain off at a certain point.
Right.
It's too much like an assignment.
Yeah. So to use that formula that we talked about in the process group, for us it was yesterday. Can you do Sophie in the formula? So in case you want to do it for yourself, for your own main character,
Yeah.
you would say Sophie is a 18-year-old woman.
Actually, I have it written down here.
Okay.
So it is, name is a adjective, year-old, noun, who wants, desire. Sophie is a eldest daughter who looks like an 80-year-old.
Although she's like 18.
Looks like an 80-year-old woman, witch, who wants adventure.
She wants to lift the curse.
She wants to lift the curse.
But she also does kind of want adventure because the very first sentence.
She's always kind of longed for adventure.
Right. She's longed for adventure.
You know, that curse, maybe the reason why she keeps it in place is that it gives her an adventure.
Oh my God. That's a really good analysis. Yeah, her quest is over. She's no longer on a quest if she lifts the curse.
Yeah. She has to go back to doing whatever.
Maybe that's what she thinks. Like the only thing that makes her interesting is if she's got this flaw.
Or that gives her a reason to do something. Otherwise, she's an oldest daughter, so why? There's nothing for her to do anyway.
Right. And she's really internalized that eldest daughter thing. Like that's holding her back. Mm-hmm. Oh, I was like, she is her worst enemy. She wants to be old. I kind of wondered, why does she want to be old? And now I know. Now I think that's why she wanted to be old.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the other reason why I love Diana Wynne Jones' stories, because there's so many things to pick apart.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird. But there is a lot there. Again, I'm going to download the book and listen to it. Because reading it once was interesting, and it all came to a head in the end. And it's like there's things that I just want to look into again. And then I'm going to watch the movie.
Okay. Well, I think we've done it for Archetypes.
We're done with Archetypes!
And then we get to go back to an in-depth version of the hero's journey, because we already actually did an overview earlier with The Hobbit. So you can check out our website and see that if you want. Come in a couple weeks, and we will be doing the steps of the hero's journey. And we're going to bring 2 different books in at this point for that. So if you want to read ahead of time, we've got John Scalzi's Kaiju Preservation Society, and we have Naomi Alderman's The Power.
Yeah, The Power, man. That's a good book.
I've started reading it.
Do you like it?
It is gripping.
Yeah.
It is very gripping.
She wrote a page turner.
Yeah.
How far you got?
I just got past the first, there's 4 different characters. I got past the first arc, and I'm just starting the second.
Okay. I have to reread it. I just finished Howl's Moving Castle like 2 days ago, so now I have to catch up to you.
And you have to do Kaiju Preservation.
Well, that's later.
Well, I'm not sure which one we're going to start with.
Oh, well, we need to know. I need to know. Our listeners need to know. No.
Actually, I think that Kaiju Preservation Society is going to be a better one to start, because it so clearly follows the hero's journey, because there's just a single protagonist.
Okay. We'll do Kaiju Preservation Society probably for the next, I don't know. So this book is big. This is a big book, which is surprising given how little there is in substance so far. And we're now on stage 2. He calls it stage 2. And, he's going to apparently go into depth on each of the steps of the hero's journey, right? That takes up more than half of the book.
Well, we got a lot of book to cover. We're going to start with Kaiju Preservation Society. Yeah. And also, it's a really good audiobook, too, if you want to listen to it. It's narrated by Will Wheaton.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love Will Wheaton. Okay, so we've got about the same amount of book space dedicated to the archetypes or dedicated to the journey. But then the book's only halfway done, and then we've got this thing called epilogue, looking back on the journey.
Yeah, I'm really dreading this one.
Wow. And then there's the writer's journey. So there's a lot more in this book than I had. Polarity. There's some interesting stuff in here. So,
or not.
We might have to read another novel or something.
Yeah. Okay. I think that sums it up.
Yep.
Like we said, we have our process groups on Wednesdays. You can find the links on our website or on Meetup, Words to Write By podcast. And they take place at 5 p.m. on Wednesdays.
And don't forget, we take tips.
Yes, we have a tip spot on our website.
Yep, that would be, if you find any of this helpful, or you feel a little sorry for us because we've had to read this book or any of these books so far for you, and we
did the work.
We did the work, and you appreciate the work. A tip would go nicely. Buy us a coffee. You could just go on our website, and then there's the tip jar, and it could be as little as $1. It could be a little bit more. Coffee, inflation.
Yes,
but we would really appreciate it because we really are just two ladies in a closet.
Thank you guys so much. You have a good week.
Bye.
Words to Write By is produced by Renee Nelson and Kim Smiga-Adam. Our theme music is Roll Back the Carpet by Cool Cat Music. Have a great day.
I'm rambling now. I'll stop talking because this is not the Renee show.